Okay, so the business card we're creating is for a skateboard shop called Session Skate Shop. And I thought it'd be really cool to have the shape of a half pipe as the background for the business card. So we're going to utilize this rectangle shape that we've drawn, and we're going to go ahead and use some tools in Illustrator to turn it into the shape of a half pipe. So let me show you how this is going to work. The first thing I want to do here is, as I'm creating this business card, I'm realizing that I'm extending the color that is going to be the background to the very edge of the artboard. And in the print world, that means that I'm going to bleed to the edge of the paper. Now, to properly prepare my document, I need to include bleed in the file. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the File menu, and I'm going to choose Document Setup. And along the top here, you can see that we have values for the bleed. Now I'm going to make sure the link button is enabled, and I'm just going to click the up arrow on one of these fields to increase the bleed to 1/8 of an inch, which is standard bleed in the printing industry. If you're ever concerned about what the value you should use, talk to your printer and they'll let you know. So I'm going to go ahead and click OK. If I zoom out a little bit, you're going to notice that the bleed guide has now been added to the edge of my artboard. And what I now need to do is select this rectangle with my selection tool. And I'm going to go ahead and just extend this. And you'll notice that my guides and my smart guides are going to snap to the intersection of that bleed guide. And that's enabled by going to View and choosing Smart Guides. So I'm going to go ahead and do the same thing here. Just drag the corner. And now you can see that my document bleeds to the sufficient amount. So that looks pretty good. Now, the next thing I want to do is I want to add a couple of guides that I can use to gauge where my half pipe is going to be created. So I'm going to show my rulers. I have the Properties panel enabled, so I can just click on the Show Rulers button. And I have a ruler at the top and the left. And what I'm going to do is click on the vertical ruler, and I'm going to go ahead and drag over to the left. And I want to position this at about 1/8 of an inch. Now, if you want to precisely position this, you can. The first thing you should understand is that your guides by default are locked. So you'll notice I can't reselect that guide. But if I go to the View menu and I go to Guides and I choose Unlock Guides, now I can actually select that guide and I can control its position in the Transform panel if I wish. So one of the things I can do if I want in the X coordinate, I'm just going to specify that value at 0.125. And then when I hit enter, it'll automatically position 1/8 inch from the edge. If I click on the ruler again, I'm going to drag another one out and position that at about 1/8 of an inch from the right side. And again, if I want that to be perfectly positioned, I can change the X value to 3.375. So that looks pretty good. Now, once you're done, to avoid accidentally selecting these guides again, you can go to the View menu and go to Guides, Lock Guides. And now you can't accidentally select them. Sometimes it's helpful to change the guide color in certain situations. If the color of your project is a similar color, you can always go to the Illustrator menu on Mac or the Edit menu on Windows and go to Preferences and choose Guides and Grid. And here you can change the color of those guides to any one of the preset colors. I'll change mine to green and click OK, and now you can see that my guides are green. Now the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to select this shape, and I want the half pipe to be kind of a wood color, if you will. I'm going to double click on the fill color, and I'm going to choose like a brownish color. I'm just going to go down to the hue here and try to find like a brown color that might work. Maybe go a little bit darker here. Come over to the left, and I'll just go ahead and click OK, and now you can see that I've changed the fill color to a brownish color. So your fill color is right here, your stroke color is right here, and the stroke is basically the border of the object. If you click on this double arrow, you'll swap the stroke and fill, and now you can see that my stroke is set to the brown color, and the fill is set to none. But I want that to be filled with the color, so I'll just click on that button again to fill it. Now, I'm going to zoom out a bit, and I'm just using the keyboard shortcut Command minus or Control minus, and I'm going to grab my rectangle tool. And it doesn't really matter what color this is, but I'm going to start way up here, and I'm just going to drag down, and I'm going to position my rectangle. I'm going to use my smart guides, and I'm going to snap that to the guide. And you can use your selection tool then to just kind of snap that in there where it needs to be. And I'm going to pull this down a little bit further. And I want to leave, maybe kind of use the rule of thirds, if you will. If you look at the overall height of this business card, I'm leaving about 1/3 at the bottom and 2/3 at the top. And maybe just for viewing simplicity, I'll change the color of this. I'll use maybe cyan just so we can really see what we're doing. And I'm going to grab any of these corner widgets and I'm going to start dragging towards the center of the shape. And what I'm doing is I'm kind of looking at this and I'm looking at this area over here. And if we think about a half pipe, this area is going to be just vertical. And then we're going to have a little bit of flat area down here. So I'm just going to kind of drag this a little bit further. And once the curve of the corner kind of stops at the top of the card, I'm going to go ahead and let go. And if I zoom in a little bit, we can kind of see what we've done here. And I think that looks pretty good. Maybe I'll pull this in a little bit to get that to the right size. I think that looks pretty good. Now the next thing I'm going to do is I want to basically punch this shape out of that background brown color. And so to do that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to select both of these shapes. So I'm going to click on the rectangle and then shift click on the rectangle up here. And I'm going to choose this tool here, which is called my Shape Builder tool. Now you can use the Shape Builder tool. We also could use the Pathfinder tool. But what you're going to find is that as you hover over the pieces of this object, it gets kind of a pattern in there. And if I were to say click and drag across these two pieces, it'll merge them together as one. If I drag across all of them, now this is all merged into one big shape. I'm going to undo that, step back a couple of times, because instead of merging them, I want to do the opposite. I want to exclude these two shapes from the rectangle. So to do that, we're going to hold down the Alt key on Windows or the Option key on Mac, and I'm going to click on this piece up here, and then I'm going to click on this piece up here. You can see the minus sign next to your cursor. And when I do that, you're going to see that I've now punched a hole through that shape. I'm going to go ahead and fit this to my window so we can see this. Now, the one other thing I wanted to show you is when you work in Illustrator by default, you're working in preview mode. And up here in the view menu, we can change between preview mode and outline view. And if I choose outline view allows me to see all of the primitive pieces of the object that I've created. And if you zoom out a little bit, we can kind of see, how this is built. And you can kind of ignore this shape over here on the side, but notice that the element that we created, the outline is right here. Okay? And you can switch between outline mode and preview mode by pressing Control Y or Command Y on your keyboard. And that'll switch between outline mode and preview mode. The benefit of outline mode is that as your artwork gets more complex, outline mode allows you to see the primitive pieces and often more easily allow you to select them. So remember, when you have this object selected, we have our fill color defined here. If you want to change the fill color, go ahead and just double click on that. That'll bring up the color picker, and the color picker allows you to define the color by just kind of dragging around in here, or you can enter your hue, saturation, and brightness values, red, green, and blue values, cyan, magenta, yellow, and black values, or hexadecimal values as well. Now we're going to talk a little bit more later on about swatches, which allows you to repeat the use of a color. But for now, we're just going to kind of utilize that brown color to represent the wood of the half pipe.